From the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, this is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. I'm Joy Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
Coming up on the program,
we're going to talk all about starting seeds indoors, the do's and don'ts, and what to start, what not to start, when to start.
A regular appearance by Mike Novak with the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Environmental Report, your questions and our answers to those questions.
We're also going to talk with Luke and Sindy from Migardener. You may know them most from their popular YouTube channel, but from Migardener.com.
And don't jump into getting started too quickly. All that and a whole lot more coming up right now.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is permeating into your ears with your host, Joey Baird.
And it could be the weeds. Some gardeners try to get all the weeds out of their garden. Other gardeners leave them in their garden. It's really a decision that you need to make. There's benefits to both sides of that. It's just something that you need to figure out what you want to do for your garden.
And Holly Baird.
Canning is a science. When you're canning, you want to make sure you follow the directions, follow the recipe, don't cut corners, don't replace things. It's crucial to you, your health, and your family.
They're professional gardeners with full-time jobs, and they're on the air now.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Joy Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
We are so happy you've joined us for Season 2 of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast, wherever you may be listening to it in the world. The information you're going to hear on this program is vital and important to the life of your garden. You just may have to tweak some of the dates and times that you applied for. We're coming to you from the WI Garden Media Studios here in southeast Wisconsin. Format's a little different. We've got a lot of guests this season. We've got 18 shows. If you're tuning in for the very first time and you have no clue who we are, well, we're going to take a little bit about who we are, and then we're going to get into the podcast and talk about what you should and shouldn't start indoors.
So we are the creators of the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and we have over 600 gardening videos, how-to style, covering canning, what to do with the food you grow, gardening, harvesting, self-sufficiency, all sorts of great topics. We also have a quarterly digital magazine. We are in our third year of that. We're about to produce our ninth digital quarterly magazine, and those are free on our website. They're full color, high quality. And then we also have this podcast.
You can go to the website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and click on the podcast tab at the top of the page, and you can see all of Season 1's podcasts and their guests and the content that we provided for you, as well as the sponsors that help make this program very, very possible for us to distribute it worldwide. Some neat features that we have on the website that we think are very special. We got a question and answer section, and that is from you, the listeners, the viewers of our YouTube, and those who've emailed the website. If you have a question, feel free to send us a message by clicking that big red button on the right-hand side of the main page, and we'll get an answer to you. And that information, minus your name, goes into our database of questions and answers on that tab, so more people who have that same question find that information. You can also send us a question via voicemail.
It's not really voicemail, it's like a voice recording. And you just click on the link, and you can do this through your phone or your computer, your tablet, whatnot. And you just go ahead, click on the link, and it'll record it. You don't have to make a phone call. It's just a voice recording.
And we can use that audio on the program here to help better educate everybody who are gardeners. So let's get into the program here. Let's talk. It's very early in the season. If you're in the southern portions of the United States, you're already planting. If you're in the northern portions of the United States, you want to plant, but you have to be a little cautious about when you're planting and what you're planting and how much you're planting indoors, because we're starting seeds, and there are some do's and don'ts about starting seeds indoors.
Right. So
some of the things you can, and let's briefly go over, and there's like 1,000,000,001 different plants you can start inside. I counted. There's 1,000,000,001.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should talk about what you shouldn't start.
Okay, let's talk about very and now some of this stuff that we're going to share is going to be very elementary level information for some of you. Others of you who are tuning in, this is going to be fresh, new information that's going to really help you in growing this year and help you be successful at creating a garden and getting off to the on the right foot.
Right. So now, personally, growing up, we never started seeds indoors. We didn't buy starts Memorial Day weekend. We put our seeds in the ground.
But you were still a gardener.
Yeah, I was still a gardener. Yeah. So put our seeds in the ground, watered them, loved them, and we had tomatoes, peas, cucumbers, zucchinis, and peppers. I think that's pretty much all we grew. Maybe some onions. I don't remember.
Now, if you start your seeds indoors, or you don't have the space to start them indoors, and you buy them from your local garden center, there's nothing wrong with that at all. The benefit to starting seeds indoors is you have the versatility to have so many more varieties to choose from versus the 3 or 4 maybe tops varieties of onion starts you would get at your garden center, or the dozen and a half peppers or tomatoes that you would get. By starting them indoors, you have, well, for example, tomatoes, you have upwards of 5,000 to 10,000 different varieties of tomatoes you can start inside. Don't start that many. You will not have the space for that many. And so there's a lot of different varieties that starting inside indoors can really give you. So let's talk about, you teased them a little bit. What are some things that cannot be started indoors, no matter how badly you want to start them indoors?
Well, root vegetables. So things like onions, or not onions.
Nope, onions are good.
Onions are good. I always think of onions right away when I
Well,
think
you put onions, and onions form in the mix of the ground. Yeah.
Okay, so beets, turnips.
Well, you're going to say beets, and that's true for the most part. But
well, maybe you should just tell them.
Well, no, for as a beginner gardener, beets are something that is frowned upon starting inside. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what we were taught forever. Don't be sad; it's okay. If you're a beginner gardener or not, you don't feel comfortable or you don't feel like you're advanced enough in the gardening experience, you shouldn't start beets inside. They can be started, and we're going to do this because we've seen YouTubers do this and transplant them out as they've gotten 3 or 4 inches tall before the roots begin to develop, to make sure you get good germination and you thin the seeds properly. So for most people, starting beets inside is really frowned upon. But we're going to experiment with it because we've seen success with this. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, go ahead with what other ones you don't want to start inside. Turnips, that's right.
Rutabagas. Potatoes. Not like you would start potato seeds, but who knows?
Yeah, for most people, you don't start potatoes indoors. Some people will play with them to get some more roots developments. But anyway.
Okay. Shh. Okay, so we got turnips, rutabagas, radishes.
Carrots. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
You'll see people do this on YouTube. Please don't start carrots from seed and try to transplant them out.
Especially if you don't have space, like a lot of space. Yeah. You want to start the important, I don't want to say important, but like things like tomatoes, you should use your space to start tomatoes indoors as opposed to carrots.
Well, carrots are a root crop, and we've talked about parsnips. If you start carrots in a traditional tray and try to transplant them out, you're going to have irregular root development. You're going to have short, stubby roots. Some roots won't even develop because you've disturbed the follicles that actually are going to create that part of the plant that you eat.
Right.
So direct sow them at the proper time, and you'll be fine.
So we got I think we got pretty much all of them covered. Carrots, radishes, rutabaga, turnips, parsnips, potatoes. I guess like sunchokes. I don't think you'd want to start those inside either, because you just put the tubers right into the ground. And then I think that's pretty much it when it comes to
your general rule of thumb is root crops. Don't start them inside. Don't try to transplant them. Direct sow them directly outside.
Now, beans and peas, you typically wouldn't start those inside. But we have with beans.
Beans, you can. Yeah. Peas have a very sensitive root system. Yeah. Where when you move them, it's gonna kill them. That's kind of what it comes down to. Well, let's talk about what we didn't mention was the ones you can start inside, and the ones that are most popular of starting inside.
What about like squash? Some people start squash, some people don't.
Well, the squash, if you start squash, you're talking your butternut.
Or they buy the squashes.
Or you
starts.
buy the squash starts. If you start the squash, obviously you want to start them about 4 weeks before you actually want to put them outside in the garden. Mm-hmm. After all danger of frost has passed, if you're going to start them inside and move them out, start them about 4 weeks, and then once they get 3 or 4 inches tall, then you want to transplant them out. You still want to harden them off even though the temperatures are fairly warm outside. You just don't want to shock them by putting them out in extreme heat or fluctuation in daytime and nighttime temperature. With squash, for the most part, it's just very easy to pre-soak your seeds and plant them directly in the ground. They're going to grow just as quickly outside when the temperature and the time is adequate. And with any of these seeds, with any of these vegetables, you have to plant them at the right time. Whether you're taking them out from transplants and putting them in the garden, or you're direct sowing them. You can't grow corn when it's 35 degrees outside, and tomatoes you can't grow when it's cold outside. You have to wait till soil temperatures, not only ambient temperature, but soil temperature has reached the optimal temperature for that particular seed to grow in.
Right.
A lot of seeds are very tolerable of colder soil temperature. Many seeds that we grow need very warm soil to germinate and begin growing. So when it comes to that type of variety, you have to know when to start them, and if you're starting them indoors, for example, brassicas can be started 8 weeks before your last average frost date. Peppers 8 to 10 weeks. Celery 10 to 12 weeks.
Oh, corn.
Corn can be started indoors. We have done this. Many people do, for the sole purpose of not every single kernel of corn that you're going to plant in the ground is going to germinate. That's just the way seeds are. Not everything's 100%. So by starting them inside and waiting until they get 4 or 5 inches tall, and then moving them out to the garden, you know you will have a steady block of corn. You're not going to have spots. But it takes space up. Right. And you still do have to acclimate the corn to the outside temperatures, harden it off, even though it's going to be warm. Acclimate. Corn wants to be planted when the soil temperature at 2 inches deep in the soil is 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and 6 inches deep is 50 degrees. That's the minimal temperature corn will germinate, and the roots temperature, that's what they need to be in order to survive. Mm-hmm. So by starting them and moving them out, you can get a jump start on the corn, but realistically, if you don't have the space, don't even try it, because it's more of a pain to try to start them inside, baby them for 3 or 4 weeks until they get 4 or 5 inches tall, then moving them out and transplanting them and making sure you don't snap a stalk off, when you could just dig a trench, pre-soak the seed, drop the seed in, and go. Mm-hmm. So that's just some, and you can go on your favorite search engine and find a lot of charts on when and to start, and it all depends on where you live. Obviously, if you live in Houston, Texas, you're going to start corn, tomatoes, peppers at a much different rate than if you live in Boise, Idaho. You have to use common sense on this. Or Canada, or Netherlands, or Australia. You have to use common sense on this. Just because you see somebody on TV or on a video that was put out yesterday planting X plant, that doesn't mean you can do it where you're at, or doesn't mean you can even start the seeds where you're at. So I'm not being... You have to be smart about how to do this. We're trying to grow food to save money, to be healthier, to be more off the land living, to be more responsible for our own being. So you have to be smart about how you do it and what moves you make. So hopefully, with what we've said, has gave you a little information on when, where, how, what not to do when it comes to seed starting indoors. You got to start the seeds indoors. Now, again, if you don't have the means or the space to start seeds indoors, you can get them from your local garden center. You can buy watermelon transplants. You can buy squash transplants. You can buy beans.
You can buy lots of transplants. You can buy lettuce. You
can buy kohlrabi. You can buy almost every type of transplant, excluding root vegetables, from your local garden center.
Right.
So,
and they'll have the seeds there too.
And they'll have the seeds there, as well as DollarSeed.com has 200 varieties. So, with that being said, we're going to leave it at that. And feel free, if you have any questions in regards to seed starting, how, when, where, or anything that we've covered or will cover, again, you can always send us a question through our website on that big red button that says question. Mm-hmm. And we will get you an answer in regards to a physical typed answer or a link that we feel is very reputable and reliable towards the topic that you have asked. With that being said, we'll be right back after this with the Mike Novak Environmental Report. It's going to be a good one. Right after this.
A gardener knows that the key to a good plant is its roots. With poor roots, the end result is not good. Conventional pots and trays cause roots to wrap around and become root-bound. Then you try to unwrap the roots at the time of planting, hoping not to break them. But never again with the Root Maker, a non-chemical innovation that naturally air prunes roots to create more vigorous roots. Never a root-bound plant again. Whether trees, flowers, or edibles, home garden or commercial grower, more roots means healthier, more productive plants. To get your own, visit rootmaker.com.
If you could double the life of your raised bed boxes by sealing the wood with a non-toxic wood preservative, would you? Well, now you can with a clear, penetrating product called Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's 100% non-toxic and easy to apply. Seal your bare, untreated wood surfaces, even chicken coops, by spraying Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's invisible, seals the wood from the inside out, and never wears off. Recommended by organic gardening experts. Internal Wood Stabilizer. Check it out at timberprocoatings.com. Looking for a fast-acting, non-toxic weed killer for your organic garden? One that works in cool and cloudy conditions as low as 40 degrees and is highly biodegradable with visible results in less than 2 hours? Then look no more. Avenger Weed Killer has it all and more. Made from oranges, Avenger is highly effective, easy to use, and has a pleasant citrus aroma. It is OMRI listed and approved for organic gardeners under the USDA's National Organic Program. Avenger Weed Killer is a choice for organic gardeners and homeowners who are looking for an effective, safe way to control unwanted weeds. Available in ready-to-use sprays and concentrate. Ask your local supplier for Avenger Weed Killer. For more information and a list of suppliers, visit AvengerOrganics.com. Avenger Weed Killer. Eco-friendly, deadly to weeds.
Now back to two gardeners that make no claims that they know a thing about golfing.
We don't golf, so we're not going to listen to podcasts about golf or watch television shows on how to golf.
But they're pretty good at gardening. Joey and Holly Bear.
Welcome back to the program. If you'd like to check out the sponsors you just heard in our entire sponsor lineup, you can find them at
the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and you just click on the podcast tab.
And they're also in the show notes below. Support them because they support us in the same gardening beliefs that you should be able to grow anywhere you want for free and grow some of your own food. Well, we're very excited in 2016 to have our good friend, a neighbor to the south of the Wisconsin state, Mike Novak, joining us each week, each program, to give us his report on the environment. And if you've never heard of Mike Novak, you will not forget who he is once you hear him talk about the environment. And you can find his link to his website in the show notes below.
Well, he was a guest on our podcast last year.
He was a guest last year on our Season 1 podcast, and he's a very excited person to listen to, and he has a lot of great points that you really need to think about what he says. So, Mike Novak with his environmental report.
And now to a man who's not afraid to tell you what you need to do to keep the planet he lives on clean.
Take your food scraps out to your compost pile. Screw in a compact fluorescent light bulb. Turn on a window fan instead of an air conditioner. Low flow, baby. Shower heads and toilets. Take one napkin at Starbucks instead of 6.
Mike Novak.
Thank you, Joey and Holly. Or is it Holly and Joey? Anyway, welcome to the first installment of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Environmental Report with Mike Novak. That's me. And I won't be using a bullhorn to get your attention, at least not very often. My job is to make you aware of environmental news, events, insights, technological advances, best practices, and a partridge in an organically grown pear tree. I imagine that many of you who listen to Holly and Joey are gardeners. Or your partner is one, or there's a gardener in your family, or you once accidentally read a gardening magazine by mistake at your dentist's office. If any of those things is the case, today's environmental message is for you. For many years, I have said that good gardeners should be good environmentalists. They should be, which doesn't mean that they necessarily are, unfortunately. When you go out to your backyard or wherever it is that you grow things, I think that your primary thought should be much like a physician's. That is to say, first, do no harm. By the way, I was doing a little research on the Hippocratic Oath and discovered that those exact words are not really part of it. Try that one out on your friends at the next party. But if you want to be a true friend of nature, first do no harm. Whether the issue is pesticides or soil amendments or watering or plant selection or pruning or fertilization or mulching or something else. And the way you do no harm is to do your homework. And that means getting the right information. So, how do you do that? Well, a great place to start is your local university extension office. There are great extension services all over the country, like in Wisconsin, where Holly and Joey live, or Illinois, where my home is. If you're tracking down information online, one way to make sure you're getting good information is to look for the .edu at the end of the website. Wherever you do your research, try to make it science-based. One very cool website that does exactly that is The Garden Professors. You can find it at gardenprofessors.com. It's run by Linda Chalker-Scott from Washington State University, Jeff Gilman from the University of Minnesota, Holly Scroggins from Virginia Tech, and Bert Craig from Michigan State University. When it comes to science, they take no prisoners and do not suffer fools gladly. They describe their blog and their Facebook pages by saying that, quote, "We are university professors dedicated to translating scientific information for your gardens and landscapes. Be informed and entertained." And they do both. If you're still seeking information, you might ask a master gardener to help you track it down. Or stop by your local botanical garden or arboretum. Often they have plant information desks where you can ask questions, get advice, and even bring in plant samples to diagnose disease and insect problems. But make sure you put your diseased plants in a sealed plastic bag so you don't unleash your own problems on everybody else. Or you can visit your local independent garden center. They often have experts on staff who can help you with your gardening questions. Yes, they're businesses, and yes, they want you to buy stuff. But most of them employ very knowledgeable folks who can help you with your gardening questions. And many independent gardening centers also have diagnostic equipment to help answer disease and insect questions. Let me put it this way. Do you think you're going to get that kind of information at a box store? Not so much. And if you want to keep quality independent garden centers in business, I would suggest buying plants there too. The discounts you get at box stores are more than offset by the lack of care that the plants receive in those stores, the lack of variety that is available, and the lack of expert advice. But that's my opinion. And of course, a lot of you buy stuff online or you start things from seeds, and those are different issues altogether. And finally, if you really want to do no harm, read and follow label directions. I know that a lot of you don't, which makes my head explode. Yep, there it went. There's a reason why manufacturers put instructions on their products. It's because used improperly, many of those products can be harmful to soils, to insects, to aquatic life, to birds, to mammals, and eventually to human beings. Even used properly, a lot of those products cause collateral damage to various life forms. Too many people assume that if some is good, more is better. Whether it's in regard to herbicides, insecticides, and especially fertilizer. Yikes! That's a horrible philosophy to have. I would rather you didn't garden at all than exhibit such reckless behavior. And for goodness sake, think twice about using that homemade remedy you found on the internet. Do you know how toxic ammonia and nicotine and bleach and salt and other household products are? Did you get a degree in chemistry? You might be better off just taking a pass on that home concoction. As I said before, first, do no harm. And if possible, leave your little section of the planet in better condition than you found it. That's my report for today. For more information, check out my website, mikenovak.net, MIKENOWAK.net. And as I like to say, go green or go home.
So do no harm, and maybe you'll make the planet a little better where you live.
Hopefully.
Well, for most part. So let's take some viewer questions, and we've got 3 of them this week that just happened to come in very close to the time this broadcast was put out. So we're going to address 3 different questions. One regarding raspberries, one regarding building soil, and
drip irrigation.
Drip irrigation and planting schedules.
Yeah.
So the first question, it's about raspberries, and the question is as follows. Any tips on taming a crazy wild patch of raspberries? I need to trim them back, but not sure what canes to cut, what to leave. Old growth, new growth, can you help? Thanks. So when it comes to raspberries, you do want to trim the old growth back, because that is the plant. That's the portion of the plant that bared fruit the past growing season. Mm-hmm. You're going to notice this the old growth because it has a darker bark to it. If you are questioning whether what's old and what's new, you can simply take a knife and simply scrape away some of the bark. On the new growth, it's going to have a green tint under it. Even if it's a dead of winter, you're going to have a little green tint under it. And then the old growth is going to be dead. You'll also see the old growth have branches that the foliage had grown on the previous year. The new foliage, or the new stalks, are going to have little bumps where the leaves and everything's going to come out of it come this growing season. So you'll want to take and go into that berry patch, and you'll want to cut at ground level the old stalks, the dark bark, and you can see that the bark is also kind of cracked. So you'll want to cut that at ground level and dispose of that. Get it away from the plant, because if you just trim and drop, cut and drop, some of those could potentially have diseases that you're going to allow to stay in that area and infest the new plants. You also want to go in and remove any growth of new. You want to go and remove any of the new growth that is smaller than the diameter of a number 2 pencil, because that's going to take a lot of the energy out of the plant for the taller stalks. Now, if your whole bush or your whole patch is about that same size, you're going to have to let it go and let it build up. But most times, you're going to have very spindly stalks, and you're going to have thicker stalks of the new growth. So that's how you're going to trim it down when it comes to making your raspberry bushes better. And what raspberry bushes do, they propagate underground, and they'll begin to get wider and wider and wider because the roots will grow under the ground and then pop up. If you want your raspberry patch to be extremely large, that's fine, or you can start trimming them back and mowing them on a regular basis. So that's an answer for the raspberries.
So then we have another question here.
I'm looking for a good garden planner. I'm new to gardening, first year.
Only 1 year in.
Only 1 year in.
So I need all the help I can get. I have my seeds from Dollar Seed, so now I need to know what grows best next to what. Also, I forget when to harvest if it's not in my face. Thank you. So, so basically,
you're looking for a companion planting chart. Companion planting is when 2 plants grow better together or next to one another than separate. Some people will swear their life on companion plantings. Others will say that it's okay, but it doesn't really do anything. So that's something that you need to figure out what's going to be best for you. In addition to the garden planter of when to plant, when not to plant, we covered that in the first segment. of, really depends on where you're at, and you can go to your local extension office website or extension office, and they will have literature for you in regards to your specific growing area, when and how to plant. For example, there is a county in, well, we were just looking at this for other reasons, there's a county in southern Idaho that literally has 4 different growing zones in that same county because of the elevation variances because of the mountains. So based on where you live in that county, you could be dead on when to plant something, or you could be very off just by a few miles based on your elevation. So that's something you want to be aware of. Anything else you want to add to that particular question?
I don't think so.
Our final question comes from Minnesota and says, I need some help with my soil. I have a very large garden that has heavy clay soil. Welcome to the club. I added that. I live on 10 acres with 6 of these acres wooded, so 4 acres of not wooded area. I do have access to free compost and wood chips through the county, and
Because she's concerned.
but she's concerned with the compost having herbicides in it. So her question to us.
I don't know if that's a her.
So the question that this individual has given us is, what would you do to greatly improve the garden soil? So let's first deal with the first question regarding the heavy clay soil.
I don't know if I would use that compost that
because
the county has.
because the compost could have herbicides in it, and or it's the same kind of, and it could linger in there and really it would destroy or disrupt the growing cycles of the edible plants that you're trying to eat.
Right. So since they're in Minnesota, if they have access to that compost, I'm sure that they have access to another type of compost, organic compost.
Well, if you look at what they have, 6 acres of wooded land.
Yeah.
What does woods have? Leaves.
Oh, yeah,
Obviously, you're not going to take 6 acres of leaves, but there's a tremendous source of nutrients in those leaves that you could begin to layer onto the... What? You're getting to that. You could layer on...
Or you can mix it in.
Mix it in.
And it's going to break it up. Otherwise, you can add coffee grounds. You can add your own compost. You can add a number of things to your garden. But the biggest thing is it's good that they're thinking ahead about the possible herbicides in the county compost or whatever. But yeah, you can add leaves, you can add coffee grounds, you can add...
If you have livestock on the property and you know what the animals are being fed, you don't want to put that manure directly on the garden. Mm-hmm. You want to compost it and mix it in with those leaves, and within 8 to 12 months, you're going to have some black soil that is going to... it will turn its head against the compost that you could be getting from the city.
Right.
So, I would really look at using the leaves that you have on your property, this individual, and start incorporating them into the garden. We have done that on our garden. This is the 3rd, 4th year we've done this.
Yeah.
And we've seen a tremendous difference. We'll pile them on in the fall, about 1 foot to 2 foot, however much we have available on the property. And then when we run out, we go across the street, and the neighbors have said, this pile here is all leaves, this pile here is long clippings, etc., etc.
Right.
So we get the leaves, and we pile them up as much until we literally run out of leaves on the property in front of the house across the street. Mm-hmm. We'll come in this spring, and those vegetables that we are going to be transplanting or starting from seed, minus stuff that we would broadcast, such as lettuce or spinach, we will simply make a hole or open a trench up, plant the seed, and as the plants emerge or the transplants go in, we will mulch back around with the leaves and have a giant thick mat of leaves where the garden beds are. But by the end of the summer, you couldn't tell that we'd put any leaves on the garden at all. They had broke down into the soil, enriching the soil, and by putting that massive leaf pile on, it's also bringing the worms closer to the surface and aerating the soil. We also incorporate as much coffee grounds into the garden as we possibly can. Every year, we get a lot of free coffee grounds. You can ask around at coffee shops. People will not say no to you. And we incorporate as much coffee grounds as we possibly can before and after the growing
They say
season.
no, you call them earth haters.
Oh, you call them earth haters? Is that the okay? All right.
Don't really do that.
No.
No.
So with that being said, that's just some of the questions that if you had a question in regards to one of those three, now you have an answer. And if you have your question that we did not answer, feel free to send it to us. Coming up after the break, Luke and Sindy of the Migardener.com, Migardener YouTube channel will be with us right after this.
Oh, yeah. What you say? You say Nasala Kombucha. It'll put some glide in your stride and some pep in your step. Nasala Kombucha. Yeah.
Nasala Kombucha makes your body happy. Nasala Kombucha makes your body smile.
At dollarseed.com, all of our seeds are only $1 a pack. And we have online resources that teach you all about the rewarding hobby of growing your own plants, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Imagine the joy you'll feel when your children actually help you harvest your first garden crop, or the pride of knowing you'll never need a florist again. Visit dollarseed.com and grow a little magic of your own for just $1. Dollarseed.com. What could be healthier?
Water is our most important resource. The key is to capture the rain that falls on your property. No need for bulky rain barrels that are hard to handle and just don't fit in. Rain Reserve has solved the problem for you with their multi-size and color cube-like units, a rain barrel that does not look like one. Capturing rain easy, going unnoticed by passerbyers and blending into the surrounding. Construction so easy, even children can put it together. To get your Rain Reserve, visit rainreserve.com and use coupon code RAIN2016 to save 10% on total purchase.
Hello, this is Sean James Cameron from the Horticultural Channel based in London, England, giving you practical gardening advice for the amateur gardener. Check us out at thehortchannel.tv. But right now we're going to join Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Welcome back to the program. You can find out more about our sponsors on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com under the podcast tab. Support our sponsors as they support us.
Let's go to the TWVG hotline and bring in our next guests. Let's go across the pond, that's the pond of Lake Michigan, and visit with our next guest. They are a husband and wife team. He has been gardening on YouTube since January of 2009 and has exceeded 7 million views, and who would soon meet his wife later through their garden endeavor. She has been an important part of the Migardener team ever since, with over 600 how-to videos on their YouTube channel, Migardener, and their website, migardener.com. There you can buy heirloom and organic seeds, as well as their special own blend of fertilizer. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more in just a moment. But first, I want to welcome Luke and Sindy of the Migardener.com to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Well, I want to start with you, Sindy, and if you can tell our listeners, and for those who may not know the entire story on how you and Luke came together through his gardening endeavors on YouTube and Facebook. Can you share how all that happened?
Yes. So it is because I saw Luke on Migardener on YouTube that we connected. So at that time I was learning about more healthier living, and I was just curious and started up a garden for my family. So I had a little question for Luke regarding my seedling for my basil. I guess I didn't. I planted too many seeds in the, what's it called? In the tray, like the seed starter tray. And I just didn't know what to do with them. I didn't want to kill them all. So I left him a message, just a comment on his Facebook page for Migardener. And then he replied nonchalantly. And he later added me on Facebook, and we started chatting. And then we met halfway later in about a week or so. And that's how we met, and we've been together ever since. We actually met on April Fool's Day in person. So. But no, he was very sweet and is so. Exactly how he appears in his videos, let's just say.
Now, with you seeing Luke on the videos, was there any hesitation to jump in front of the camera with him and help instruct people on how to garden?
I was slightly interested in creating a channel myself. He did motivate me and push me. I'm a very introverted person, so going on camera takes a lot of my energy sometimes. So he persuaded me to start doing some tutorials on cooking, which I do enjoy doing here and then. But then the wedding came along, and I changed jobs, and I just haven't been able to make as many videos as I'd like. But hopefully, in the near future, like I always promised. But I help mostly behind the scenes with at Migardener.com right now, and he goes full time in school, and I go have a full time job as well. So I try to help out as much as I can. But yeah, he always wants me to be in the camera.
I totally understand that, Cindy. I'm an introvert as well. I understand how nerve-wracking it can be at times to be in the videos. Now, you guys have a cottage garden. You garden in several locations. But at your cottage garden, you're going to convert from a traditional ground garden to a raised bed garden. Many of your viewers and our listeners even would like to know why you're choosing to go this route.
Well, for us, the idea of raised beds, just not being able to trample the soil and stuff, to be able to have the soil stay loose, and not only that, but raised off the ground, which has a lot of benefits. One of the things that we found with an in-ground bed is that, especially there in that location, the soil retains a lot of water, which is great for a garden during the summertime when water might be at a shortage, but it's really bad in the springtime for getting started. And we would find that we would till up the ground and stuff, and as much as we don't want to till, we would have to till in order to dry out the soil, and that was kind of a thing that we wanted to get away from. But then also, even once we tilled, it was probably, my goodness, it was probably late April, early May before we could even get a garden in, and then you're missing out on a lot of growing stuff like lettuce and spinach and really early spring stuff that we do enjoy eating, but it just couldn't happen up there because the soil was so wet in that location. And then raising the beds up just helps to air out the soil better, and then also things like tomatoes. One of our biggest battles has been tomatoes because they're on the lake. We get a lot of cold airs at night that it keeps the soil really damp, which is amazing for not having to water. We hardly ever have to water. But having those tomatoes there and getting damp all the time that load the ground, it really causes a lot of blight and fungus and stuff. And so we're hoping that in raising them up a few inches, it's going to allow some airflow underneath the plants, which I'm almost certain is going to help cut down on the blight. So there's a lot of reasons. So, but also, just the compaction of the soil is so crucial when you're not up there all the time to weed, and maybe you might get up there like once or twice a week. You can pull the weeds out much easier, even if they get more established.
Now, Luke, you've been doing this since 2009 on YouTube, and you've talked to gardeners literally around the world. What have you found to be one of the communal problems that all gardeners face, whether advanced or intermediate, when it comes to growing their own food?
I would probably say that the one thing that I see most people having a problem with is knowing when is enough, the thing that people really struggle with is knowing when is enough fertilizer to give their plants and when is enough water to give their plants. I know it might seem like for most bigger gardeners or more experienced gardeners, we kind of can tell when enough is enough. And some people, they kind of just fill their plants with kindness. And I find that a lot of people are saying, I'm spending X amount of dollars raising this garden. And I say, well, how big is your garden? And they give me their size. And the amount that they're spending on the size of their garden just to maintain it is totally disproportionate. And they might be spending the equivalent of a garden 3, 4, 5 times their size. And that can be really discouraging for a younger gardener because they're spending so much money to maintain so little return. And I usually just say, listen, what you're doing is fine. You're getting, you're getting plants to grow, and you don't need to overdo it because plants will only take in a certain amount of nutrients. After that, you're basically just throwing it down the drain, or not necessarily throwing it down the drain, but plants just aren't uptaking it. So you might as well, if you're supplementing with like an organic-based fertilizer, or you're watering with city water that you're paying for, lay off of it a bit because you're actually going to be able to cut some of your costs, and your plants will do just the same.
Well, you brought up the term fertilizer. Now you have Trifecta Plus, which is a custom blend that you've created. And what was the reason for creating this unique blend of fertilizer that can be found at your website at migardener.com that you'll ship to? Where can you ship it to? And what was the driving force behind creating this specific blend?
Well, Joey, I think the biggest reason that I always tell people is kind of hidden in what I was telling you before about just people not having a go-to thing that's cost-effective. A lot of times, and I try not to say other companies, because, every company is doing their own thing just like we try to do. But the thing that other companies are doing is they're trying to sell three main nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium, which are key and great nutrients. I will not lie there. But when it comes to a well-balanced fertilizer, it's a lot like the food that we put in our body. And if it's not well-balanced, your plants are going to not be getting what they need. And so what we were finding is that one fertilizer might have a great nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium level, and then another fertilizer might have really great micronutrients. But they weren't ever together in one spot. And then the second problem that we were having is one was very fast-acting, and the nutrients would kind of kickstart the plant, and then they basically fizzle out. And then another time, you might have a need for really fast-acting nutrients, and you apply this other nutrient, and it's very slow and drawn out. And so we basically formulated over the course of 5 years a fertilizer that has a perfect blend of fast-acting and slow-release nutrients that are both macronutrients and micronutrients. So stuff that is in very small quantities that are still essential to plant life. And then the final reason why we created Trifecta is because we could not just find a really reliable source of beneficial bacteria and fungi, which any experienced gardener and all inexperienced gardeners should know about is the essential bacteria and fungi that colonize the plant roots and help to uptake the nutrients better. And we found that the combination of those four things just have absolutely solidified every reason why we created Trifecta, because it is all those things all put into one. It's very cost effective, so that a little bit goes a very long way, and you're not spending more money than you should have to be.
Now, you have, as people see you on YouTube, they see you grow all this food. Now, what happens to the food? Do you can it? Do you freeze it? Do you dehydrate it? Do you give it away? Do you sell it? What do you do with all that extra produce?
Well, I'm going to let Sindy tell you this one, because she does most of the work in the kitchen in terms of preparation. And so I'm going to pass this one off to Sindy.
That's a good question, Holly. Well, a lot of the times what we do is we prepare like fresh salads with or smoothies, since we do grow a lot of greens as well. But Luke is a much better canner or experienced canner, I would say, than I am myself. I still am trying to get into it. One thing we would like to do is try to do fermenting. Later on, maybe that will be a goal for us next growing season. But also we like to... what do you want to say?
I was just going to say, since we don't have the room a lot of times, we tend to freeze more as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because in our apartment where we currently live, we actually have an electric stovetop. So you can't put a pressure cooker or a pressure canner on top of the electric stovetop. It's something we found to be very difficult. So by freezing a lot is kind of the next best alternative. It's not ideal because we would like to can more than we do, but we do a lot of freezing as well.
Mm-hmm. So we'll use it later on for like chilies or soups, things like that, just to keep us supplies up for the winter. But a lot of the time we also do donate it to the soup kitchen because we do tend to grow a little bit too much, and we'll spread it across with our friends and family as well, which they enjoy having.
Now, Luke, you recently picked up beekeeping. For those of us who want to venture into that type of hobby, and after we find out that it's okay and legal and all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted in the community or area that we live in, what are some of the essential items, or what was something that was very surprising to you that you learned very, very quickly about keeping bees?
I would say the most important thing when keeping bees is realizing that they actually like it to be cramped. In my first year of beekeeping, I'm not afraid to say this, I absolutely failed at it. And it sometimes takes that failure in order to learn what you did wrong and learn from your mistakes. And that was that I gave them too much room too fast. Oftentimes you look at the bees and you say, well, the more space I give them, let's say I have them in a box that's like a 10-frame deep box, and I want to put a second 10-frame deep box on. I want to make sure that there is not a square inch left in the very first 10-frame box, because if there is, they're going to be having more space than they need, because bees, they actually like that communal that communal feeling, because if there's a lot of space, what happens is they have to actually delegate guard bees to the spots that aren't filled. And what I found is that I put the boxes on too soon, and too many bees were spent guarding the extra space rather than going out and finding pollen and nectar to actually build up their colony size. And so we were actually really low on numbers. And then, as you know, the Michigan winters are brutal, and they ended up dying because there wasn't enough of an established colony. And so, yeah, I would say the thing that everyone has to know is that it's better to be cramped than to give them too much room.
Now, a lot of people have a vegetable that they feel is a challenge to grow. What is your most challenging item that you grow?
Yeah, most challenging, definitely melons. Definitely melons. Cindy and I have been trying melons for the longest time, and the biggest problem that we have is we know exactly how to grow it, and we've grown them in different locations. Like, for instance, Cindy's home is great for growing melons and cucumbers and stuff like that. But for us, it's just, like I said, the wet, cold temperatures of Michigan, we just get powdery mildew so quickly that you can hardly ever get anything to grow to maturity as far as a melon goes, because they're just so prone to it. And that's been our hardest thing, is just getting an easy melon that likes to mature quickly, and it's just process of elimination. I'm sure we'll find it eventually, but that's definitely the hardest.
Well, as we wrap up, Luke, what is what is one piece of advice that you could offer a gardener, beginner or advanced, that really could give them that extra little that they need going into this new growing season?
I would definitely have to say try everything. As a gardener, we really like to stick to the varieties that we know. However, oftentimes I've found that by venturing out and giving maybe 10% of the garden to trying a new variety or something that we haven't heard of before, sometimes those are the varieties that we think that we find are actually the most productive. For instance, a few years ago we decided to try a yellow zucchini, and for the longest time we were only going to grow the dark green zucchinis, and we didn't have a problem with the yellow. It's just we were never one to grow the yellow zucchini, and we just buy it from the store. We turned out we grew it, and it was actually 5 times more productive than the green zucchini. And so now we've actually switched to growing all yellow zucchini and buying the green zucchinis for that reason. And so that's definitely one of the things that I think is most valuable to any type of gardener. And, you know, to always have fun as well. Just because oftentimes people sometimes get bogged down with, I have to produce X amount of stuff in order to have a successful garden. And by really not putting kind of a tag on what success is, can help you have a little more fun as well. So maybe those two things, I guess.
That's definitely some good advice, and sometimes switching things up can renew your faith in your garden, I think, as well.
So, for people who want to venture over to MI Gardener to purchase seeds or the Trifecta, migardener.com, and where do you ship to, or where can you ship, or what's the legalities of that?
Well, we can ship anywhere in the world. The only problem is New Zealand. We're having a problem getting into New Zealand, but anywhere other than New Zealand, we can ship seeds to, and fertilizer. We ship anywhere in the United States starting at $2.50. We try to make it pretty cost effective, and that includes Hawaii and Alaska, and Puerto Rico as well. So we make it really cost effective for gardeners to do that. And we then also, the shipping kind of is very cost effective for international as well. I believe it starts at $7. So for $7, you can have a package of seeds at your door overseas, which is something that we take a lot of pride in, is keeping that low for people.
Absolutely. Well, Luke, Cindy, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us here on the program. And migardener.com is the destination for all that, and over 600 how-to videos. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks so much, Joey and Holly, for your time.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
And we'll be right back after this.
Do you want your next raised beds to be easy, functional, and beautiful? The Embrace helps you create the garden you've always wanted. Finally, raised beds that everyone can assemble and enjoy. No tools needed. Just slide any lumber into the Embrace corner, fill with your favorite soil mix, and you're ready to plant. Made from 100% recycled steel right here in the USA. And a portion of every sale helps to build school and community gardens all across the country. Let the Embrace help you create your next raised bed. Grow beautifully with the Embrace. Available at local garden centers and online at artofthegarden.net.
It's all about the soil at ManureT.com. With their grass-fed, antibiotic, and growth hormone-free cattle and horses, owner Annie Haven puts the quality in her premium soil conditioner. 100% organic and natural, whether feeding your flowers or veggies, indoors or out, you can grow organically with confidence. To purchase authentic Haven brand Manure Tea, small orders or large, go to ManureT.com. Always free shipping.
Hey, Scott Poirier here with GottaGrowIt.com, and I gotta tell you, I'm like nuts over anything you can grow out of the soil and eat. I'm all about growing food successfully. Currently, you're listening to Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Podcast.
Welcome back to the program.
You can go ahead and take a look at our sponsors. They're on the sponsor tab on the website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.
They're on the podcast tab.
Podcast. What did I say?
You said the sponsor tab.
Sorry.
The podcast tab at the top of the page.
At the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Support them because they support us.
So let's, before we get out of here today, we've got two more topics. We've got gardening in 2 minutes, and we've got don't jump the gun when it comes to planting your garden. But first, Gardening in 2 minutes. Gardening in 2 minutes is an audio production that Holly and I produce on a weekly basis for a number of podcasts and a few radio programs. If you would like Gardening in 2 minutes on your particular program, contact us through the website. This Gardening in 2 minutes is all about if you've never started a garden at all. And here is Gardening in 2 minutes. This is Gardening in 2 minutes. So it's a new year. You want to garden this year for the very first time, and you have no clue what to do or what not to do. Well, there's some things that will help you along the way. One being, no matter what you do, you want to grow what you eat.
This is important because you'll feel more invested with your time, and you'll be more pleased with yourself once it's successful, and you're going to eat it. And if it's something that you don't enjoy, you may not feel like you want to invest your time or your energy into that item.
Try something new. Yes, you want to have your tomatoes, your peppers, your green beans, if those are the things you want. But also designate a little portion for something crazy, something that's very unique that you just want to curiosity try to grow. Also, you will kill plants. That will happen. You can talk to anybody who's been gardening for any amount of time. Killing plants is one of the things you have to do before you can become a good gardener. Knowing what plants grow where and how good they grow, whether it's partial shade or full sun, or if you're trying to grow a plant in your specific growing zone that never was intended to grow there.
Every year is different. You may have years where you have a lot of rain, you have a perfect amount of rain, perfect amount of heat, perfect amount of humidity, and you're going to have a year where you're going to have a drought, or you're going to have a cooler spring or a hotter spring. So every year is different, and you're going to have to learn how to adjust to that.
And the biggest tip, the biggest piece of advice that you can possibly receive is understand your soil. Your soil is the living for your plants. Your plants live in the soil, so if there's something wrong with your soil, your plants are going to react to that and not produce as the plants were intended for. So spend 90% of your time on soil preparation, whether that bringing in good compost, getting a pH test done, sending some soil samples off to your local university for a small fee, so you know what you've got to work with. Because if you have poor soil, you will have poor plant production. For more information on the basics of how to get started in gardening and tips and tricks along the way, our weekly video productions, as well as our free downloadable digital quarterly magazine, you can find all that information at
thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. For Gardening in 2 Minutes, I'm Joey Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
So we hope that if you never started to garden, or if you've in your 37th year of gardening, that you've picked up a little bit up, and we all can be better gardeners. Every day we learn something new, and we can be better at what we do.
If you're in your 37th year and you didn't pick anything up, then it was just 2 minutes of maybe a reminder.
Right. So, with that being said, let's talk about not jumping the gun. We talked about this early in the program, about starting seeds, when to start seeds, when not to start seeds. But realistically, when I say start jumping the gun, I'm talking about, one, don't plant your plants too early and they get frostbitten or they freeze or snow falls on.
Let's talk about that. Okay, so what are some reasons, say that say it's, now we typically plant tomato plants here around Memorial Day weekend. We put those into the ground, not start the seeds, but put the plants into the
transplants in the ground.
Yeah. So say you're like, okay, it's May 10th, and you look at the 10-day forecast, and it's supposed to be warm, and it's been a warm spring, and you're like, oh, if I get these tomatoes into the ground now, I'll have less to do Memorial Day weekend, or my neighbor, I'll have tomatoes, and at the end of July, my neighbor won't get tomatoes till August, and then I can get a jump on canning or freezing or just a nice caprese salad. But why shouldn't we do that, Joey? Because
it's much easier to plant your tomatoes 2 weeks late than the second time when your neighbor plants them their first time. By planting them too early, you're going to take the risk that your tomato plants, the nights are going to dip down too cold, and it's going to shock the plants. It's going to put them in a state of shock, which is going to take a while for them to come out. True enough, if you're setting with 10 days before you typically would plant tomatoes, we're using tomatoes as an example. This can be fill in the blank, your vegetable, whatever. There can be times where the forecaster, the meteorologist, who gets paid a lot of money, he's only right 25% of the time.
Well, it's not even about him being right. It's just weather patterns can change. And, just even 2 weeks ago, we were supposed to have a blizzard on Thursday, and, they were calling for the next Tuesday, and then we got rain. So it's just stuff happens.
Now, here's the other factor you want to take in consideration. Are you planting 4 tomatoes or are you planting 45 tomatoes?
Right.
If you're planting 45 tomatoes, and we plant somewhere between 40 and 50, something like that.
Yeah.
If I see that 10 days before I would normally typically go out and plant the tomatoes, I see the forecast looks good. And I begin to harden these tomatoes off, and they're getting pretty close to completely hardened off. That means you take them out for a certain period of time, bring them in, so they get acclimated to the outdoor temperature all the time. I may take 2 or 3 pretty strong transplants that I've got that we started from seed, and I'll put them in the ground.
Yeah, there's nothing
I'll go ahead and put them in the ground. Now, all you've got is 4, I would hold off.
Yeah.
Now, like we've said, we plant 40 or 50. I will put 3 or 4 in the ground just to get a jump start on those. And this could be indeterminate.
Now there's
indeterminate varieties that will grow indefinitely until it freezes, so they can get more of a jump start. But that's the way I would do it.
There's also ways to prevent sometimes you plant seeds and they don't germinate, and we've had this happen because of rain or dampness.
Fluctuation of temperature.
Yeah, like last year we planted a whole area of beets, and then I think it rained and then got cold or something like that.
Rain got cold, and we think the seeds maybe dried out somewhere in between, and they didn't germinate.
Yeah, so that was disappointing. Plus, you know, it was a lot of work doing all that. So sometimes it's good to look ahead at the forecast as well. And if it doesn't pan out to what you thought, you know, you do take a gamble gardening, and that's all there is to it. So you have to keep that in mind. But it's good if you're kind of on the brink and you can wait a week, then wait a week, and you might be better off.
Also, what Mike Novak talked about in his environmental report, don't jump the gun on putting too much fertilizer on the garden.
Right.
Just because you think, and Mike said it very, very appropriately, if a little's okay, a lot is better, and that's not the case at all. You can actually reverse what you're trying to do by adding too much of this stuff. Now, you can never add too much compost. I'm not talking about compost. I'm talking about commercially grade fertilizer. If you can never add too much compost to a garden. You can never add really too much coffee grounds if you incorporated them into the soil correctly. You can never add too many leaves.
Just don't have a whole bed of only coffee grounds.
Well, don't have a whole raised bed of coffee grounds. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying here.
Right, I know what you mean. So yeah, coffee grounds are always beneficial, and coffee grounds attract the worms. It's like worm crack for worms. So that's always good too, because you want a lot of worms in your garden, and you don't want to bring them in from outside sources. That's another way of not doing harm. If you're adding worms from another source, that's bad because it can mess with the ecosystem in your yard. And so
we get that question a lot.
We get that question a lot, and we want to attract them naturally. You don't want to mess with Mother Nature.
There's plenty of worms in the soil, and worms can go as far as I forget how many feet. 8 feet.
How's that? You know, if you feed them, they will come.
Right. So we hope that you've taken something away from the podcast today. If you've liked what you've heard, share it with somebody that you might feel that it's going to be beneficial to. We appreciate you tuning in. We thank Mike Novak for his environmental report. We thank Luke and Cindy from the Migardener YouTube channel for joining us and sharing their wisdom. And now we've all become better and become more knowledgeable in gardening, so we can go out tomorrow or next week or next month and make a difference in our garden so we can get more crops out of it than what we could have a year ago, not knowing what we know now. Audio you've heard on the program is courtesy of sfx.co.uk and audioneutronics.com, two royalty-free and copyright-free websites we use to help liven up the podcast.
And the audio for Dollar Seed and Nasala Kombucha came from themselves.
So until next time, I'm Joey Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
And we will see you in the garden. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is a production of the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide and distributed in association with WI Garden Media.